episode of the Habibis. Ramadan is over, Eid is over. It's all back to normal days, normal weeks, full year ahead. My name is Ram Ismail. I'm your host for today.
And I'm Osama Dorias.
وأنا فوزي مسمار.
It's all done.
It's in the books.
Did it again.
So the next Ramadan's going to be just around the corner now. That's how it usually works out.
A few weeks out.
Exactly.
It goes so fast. I'm when we're recording this, it's not yet exactly but I'm really curious what that special iftar with your kids is going to end up like.
We're still discussing it, but honestly, it's looks like it's going to be Indian food, butter chicken, and pizza, because the kebab vote was apparently just a joke.
Oh.
Okay.
Someone was trying to put me on the spot. So it looks like it's going to be Indian food and pizza, but I'll let you know.
But I was on team watermelon.
Yeah.
We might also have watermelon. We'll definitely have ice cream. One way or the other. We're going to have so many sweets. Ice cream's definitely going to make it. That's good, for sure. Good. Yeah. For people who don't know what that's about, listen to the super secret guest Sahur Bite, and you'll get the idea.
It was good. The Sahur Bites were really fun. For me, there's a lot of in terms of games. It's been kind of a weird week, I must say, because I've just been waiting for Mass Effect. Honestly, that's it. So I haven't played much. Have any of you played much? Osama, you?
Yeah, I actually played a game called Second Extinction. I saw it's a game that's in early access. It's a shooter, like a squad shooter or like a co-op shooter, similar to Left 4 Dead. Not exactly the same as Left 4 Dead, but similar to Left 4 Dead, except instead of zombies, you're fighting dinosaurs. And it's in early access, and I only played it alone. So I can talk about it, but I don't think I had the actual intended experience. Playing like Left 4 Dead type games alone is not the same, right? So let's talk about it a little bit. But the way the setup that they have is that they send you on missions. They also have a free roam mode where it's just like, open world, go anywhere and just shoot things if you want till you get bored. I guess it's a cool mode to like experiment with your guns and weapons and stuff. I did that. I dabbled in that a little bit. Then I went and played the regular missions. I don't know if it's because it's early access or if it's because I got unlucky, but the mission types, like what they have you doing, was a little bit samey. It's always like pick up some eggs or like turn off these buttons. That wasn't necessarily a bad thing, but like it could have used a little bit more variety. Now, the animations were stunning. The animations of the dinosaurs themselves, they were elaborate. Like the dinosaurs, when you hit them, they flinch in a believable way. When you melee them, they have a different animation, a different reaction. And if your timing is wrong with the melee, they actually dodge you. Like things like that were pretty cool. I actually really enjoyed it. Initially, a lot of the fodder dinosaurs that you fight off, even though they have different abilities, they kind of have the same or similar silhouette and they're the same size. So it's kind of difficult to you have to squint and be like, which one is this one? Is this one the one that just runs at you, the one that burrows underground, the one that has armor, the one that turns invisible? So it would have been a little bit better to have them look different. Like the game is a little bit dark, and there's snow and visibility is a little bit difficult. So figuring out how you're going to engage is difficult to parse all the different enemies that you're fighting until a bigger dinosaur shows up, and then the focus changes. I fought a Triceratops, and that was fun. The Triceratops, you cannot shoot its face, its head. It's perfectly armored, so it's all about dodging to at the last second when it charges you and shooting its sides. That was a lot of fun. I love dinosaurs. I didn't really like shooting herbivores too much, so I have to detach myself from that feeling while I'm playing. But when it's charging at you, it's really easy to justify shooting it. The game itself, it feels unfinished, even though it is early access, so it is unfinished. The first character that I picked up was a character called Emir, and of course, if you're going to include a character with an Arabic name, they could also be Southeast Asian or Persian, because he spoke perfect English with a perfect American accent, so I couldn't really tell where he was intended to be from. But he was brown, and his name was Emir. I picked him only to realize that his gun was like a grenade launcher, and it wasn't meant for to be being the only character was a challenge with him because you needed a tank type character. Otherwise, they swarm you, and the grenade is not good when everyone's up close to you, as you can imagine. So it's not like every character was balanced to be able to go solo. I looked at one other character, and her ability is that she healed the group. So like the characters had a mix of abilities that help the group and a mix of some of them had abilities that are just very, very solo. So I had to switch away from that character. It just wasn't working. I don't know if later on there's like a progression system that rebalances them, gives them more abilities or guns. But I just took a tanky type character and I did infinitely better. I did way, way, way better. The game got much, much easier. So there is a balance issue. And that's a tough challenge. That's a tough problem to fix. Like, how do you make a character viable in both single player and co-op? It's not that easy. Usually it just requires more features, more content, like you give them more options. And that's something that's hard to ask of a small studio. This looks like it was made by a smaller studio. Overall, I did enjoy my time with it. I did not play it with other people, and I did get swarmed. It got difficult because, try to play a Left 4 Dead game alone. And it's not like Left 4 Dead where if you play alone, you have co-op AI partners that at least help you. This is, if you're alone, you're alone. And I'm not sure if the game was balanced otherwise. The AI, except for the big dinos, the AI of the little dinos was a little boring. It was very seek and destroy. And so you're playing most of the match by running backwards and shooting at things at a Serious Sam, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I made a Serious Sam game even.
Yes, you did. Where you do exactly that, where you run backwards.
Yeah, it was a turn-based RPG, but yes, you run backwards.
So like that's not everybody's cup of tea. Like when you play a Left 4 Dead, usually you have other there's always the loom of the specials that could be at around any corner, and they break that up a little. Plus, you're always driven to move forward, otherwise you get swarmed. Here, it wasn't exactly like that. It didn't have the same intensity. So I did spend most of the map engaging, running backwards to the last point while shooting the dinos, and then moving forward again. So there's a lot of like forward and back. So there are a few things to tweak. I'm not sure when the game's actually going to release, but they're not huge changes. There's small tweaks that they have to do. Overall, I enjoyed it, but I'm looking forward to playing it with real people because that's really the intended experience.
Right.
So I'm curious, like with larger sized dinosaurs, how is the swarm feeling like?
Oh, they feel just like they're still there, and they are still swarming you. So I was like running backwards from while the Triceratops was chasing me, shooting the other dinos because I can't shoot the Triceratops in the face, dodging at the last second, focusing on the Triceratops, shooting it in the side, and then running backwards again while shooting the dinos. It doesn't sound great. It's actually fun. That experience was like, like the switching between the different targets while fighting a big one was actually a lot more fun than just running backwards and shooting. There's still a little bit of dodging to do when you're shooting the little dinos. Like the little dinos, by the way, are like Velociraptor size, and I think I assume they're actually Velociraptors, but they had different flavors of them. Like they've evolved. Haha, joke. Like some of them like turn invisible, as I mentioned. Some of them actually they have rocks on their heads and on their hands, and they curl up in a ball. And if you shoot them, you won't get them. You'll have to actually like move to the side and shoot them, or just. But the thing is, if you just run backwards, eventually they're going to get out of that formation, and you could just shoot them again. So there's never a need really to break your I'm going to run backwards and shoot them part, except when the big dinos are there, and then it becomes a lot more interesting.
Sounds like a lot of fun, actually, especially like with multiplayer.
Yeah,
right.
I'm sure that's where it shines. That's it. That's what I played this week. I mean, I also played a crap load of Call of Duty, way more than I should have. I finished the Season 3 Battle Pass. And
wait, isn't that like out for like 3 weeks at this point?
The season 3, yeah. I played
You
way
went
too
fast.
much Call of Duty. It's my comfort food game these days more than anything else.
Not supposed to eat during the day, Simon.
It's so good though. It was so good, and I didn't have much else to do because there was no eating during the day anyway.
Right.
So who's next?
I can go next. Yeah. So I'm going to continue the. I watched a movie and I played a video game. So I want to talk about a movie. I can continue my my Oscar run of Oscar movies. So I've seen Promising Young Women. Promising Young Woman is the movie, is what it's called. That movie got nominated for five Oscars, including Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Actress, and ended up winning Best Original Screenplay. It is another directorial debut movie, which is like really fascinating. I think there was like 3 directorial debut movie this year, if not more, that just like, director makes a movie for the first time, gets nominated for an Oscar. This one is by Emerald Fennell, who is an actress. She's been in a lot of movies before, and she's a writer and a producer. So she's been in the industry for quite some time. But this has been her first directing movie. She also wrote and produced the movie itself. It is a hell of a ride. I'll tell you that much. Like it's really one of those movies that kind of keeps you at the edge of your seat. Of course, I'm going to avoid talking about the plot as much as I can, because I don't want to create any spoilers. But it's basically it's a movie about predators. So it's a very difficult subject matter to tackle. And what I liked about the movie the most is that it has this really interesting style of weaving so many different styles of movie while you're watching it. Like the movie starts off like you're trying to figure out what's going on, then turns to thriller, drama, romantic comedy at some point, back into drama. It kind of like it messes with viewers' expectations at all points. So every time you think that you know what's going to happen, it kind of like takes a nice turn around. Very intense movie to watch, but super good. Quite enjoyed that one.
Good. I've heard only good things about it, so it's definitely a movie that I'm gonna add to my list.
It's an easy to recommend movie because, like, a lot of Oscar movies, like the 2 movies I spoke about last time, it's like, a slow, methodical work of cinema. Like, there's certain types of people that really appreciate that more than others. I feel like Promising Young Women like has a much wider spectrum. And as you're watching it, you go like, I'm really happy that, a movie like this is getting nominated for an Oscar. This is not the type of movies you would usually see in an Oscar roster, like, getting, or a Sundance, or getting like this kind of recognition. Definitely recommend it. It's a ride, I would say. And on another note, I played a video game. I played a small indie game on the Switch called Short Hike.
I heard good things.
Yep, that's a good game.
It's so much fun. Like I think I saw a friend of mine tweet about this at some point. I was like, oh yeah, I missed this game when it came out, and I saw it. It was on sale on eShop, so I picked it up. Essentially, you play as a bird. The graphic style of this game I kind of like because it's polygonal, but it's like this pixelated polygonal, like low res polygon, reminiscent of like PlayStation 1 era style graphics. It's isometric but still 3D. You play as this bird, and you basically start told to like you have the cell phone and you need to make a phone call, but in order for you to make this phone call you need to take a hike to the summit of the mountain, because that's where you can get reception. Okay. And you slowly make your way through the through the world. You move your way around. You meet a bunch of characters, and these characters, they give you stuff, and you can use. Like they can give you a fishing rod, so you learn how to fish, or they can give you an axe. So now with the axe, you can remove some rocks, and that opens up shortcuts. Or like they give you a shovel, so now you can dig holes and you can find stuff. You find coins lying around, you find shells. Some person asks you to collect shells, some person asks you to collect coins. Some characters sell stuff, so that you can need to collect those coins to get those items from. Until you finally make your way up to the hike. It's very charming. I like it's kind of open world in terms of like you need to reach to the hike to the top of the mountain, and how you get there is up to you. There are some areas on on your hike that are gated that require you to have a certain number of an item to be able to progress. So you need to find ways to collect that. But how you go about finding those things or collecting them is completely up to you. At the beginning, when you don't know that, you go, oh, there's a sign that says I can go to the right to get to the mountain peak, but there's also something here on the left. I'm going to go check that out. Then you go there, and there's also 3 other areas now you can explore to. So it's a bit of FOMO as you first start playing the game. But the more you play it, the more you realize that actually you can traverse the world a lot more easier than you think. And actually actively exploring the world and finding stuff around it is one of the bigger purposes of the game. So you give in and you go out and enjoy that. And it's been very very enjoyable. Like I think the writing is very cute, very funny. It made me lol a bunch of times, which is it's very difficult to do generally, but in a video game more especially. Music is really well made. I generally enjoyed the music, and got a bunch of the soundtrack already on my list. And,
how long is the game?
It's in the title, really. It's quite a short game. I think you can spend a couple of hours with the game and see most of. I think if you're a completionist, the 2 to 3 hours you'd get everything. But if you're you want to have a quick breeze through the game, you could probably wrap it up in an hour and a half.
Wow. Okay, that's perfect. Yeah,
it's a lot of fun. Short game. It's on sale. Independent developer. Give those guys some bucks and play it. So fun.
Absolutely, we need more short games. I think I'm going to play it this week.
Rami, did you play anything, or just sitting idly playing 8 games while you wait for Mass Effect?
I guess a little bit of that.
Every week, Rami, you go this week has been a weird week for me. I haven't played much video games, and then then I grab a pen and paper. And I was like, oh boy, here it comes, and there's 12
here we
games.
Go. Right. Well, there will be some recommendations. So I picked up. So mostly my game week has been booting up my PlayStation 5 and refreshing the Mass Effect countdown, because I really, really, really want to play Mass Effect again. And eventually you get bored of doing that. So I went back and I looked at Game Pass. You two keep talking about Game Pass. I never boot up my Xbox. I went, you know what? I'll take a look at Game Pass. And I ended up picking up No Man's Sky again. Played that a little. Mm-hmm. And it's still good. It's still No Man's Sky. It's still fun flying around the universe. But
I only played it at launch, so I haven't actually seen that major update that made it much, much better. And I keep telling myself I'm going to go back, but it's really hard. It's such a huge time commitment. It's really hard to justify going back for the update. So.
It's a lot. The thing that I've noticed that's new is the base building, which is interesting, but not really my style of gameplay. So I did a little bit of that, and then I hit the sort of the you gotta dig for resources wall, and I was like, okay, so it's still No Man's Sky. Mm-hmm. Then I picked up Mirror's Edge again, the original.
Ooh.
And that's still a good game. Yeah. Still a good game. Still makes you nauseous, though.
Yeah, that's the thing. I've played the first 20 minutes of that game 5 or 6 times. It's one of the very few games that gives me motion sickness. I will never finish it. I give up.
Right.
I'm really sad about that because it looks like it's my cup of tea.
It's really good. It remains really good. I can play for maybe 2 hours before I get motion sick. So I played for about 2 hours and then I got motion sick. And then this week was a big week in one other way when it comes to games. My mom finished Ghost of Tsushima. She's been playing it for almost half a year now.
Wow.
140 hours of gameplay, of 114 hours of gameplay.
Wow.
I think she's going to go for the platinum.
Yeah.
Her first platinum trophy, which would be really good. But yeah, she completed the final battle, and it's really fun to watch her get so much more confident with games in general. Like, she's doing perfect parries and picking weapons based on the enemy type and doing stuff like that. So she's really proud of the perfect parries too, which is really nice. But it was really funny watching her in the final fight, just sort of like bouncing around on her chair with the tension, just being like, oh, and like moving the controller and like wild gesticulation with the controller as she was playing. It's a pretty exhausting fight, so I was really proud of her beating it in one go, which was really nice. So
she picked a good one. Ghost of Tsushima was my game of the year last year. I loved it.
It was an incredible game.
And yeah, I think the first game I intentionally platinumed in a decade. Like, I can't remember the last time I wanted to platinum a game.
I think Final Fantasy 15 was and Nier Automata, but Nier has this trick where there's a store where you can buy trophies. So you don't have to actually achieve every achievement or trophy. You can just go to the store and buy them.
That's clever.
If you have enough money to buy them. There was one trophy where you had to look
real money or in-game currency?
No, in-game currency.
Okay. That's much better.
But there was one trophy where you had to look under the skirt of the main character, and I just refused to do that. So I could buy that one in the store and still get the achievement. And I was like, nice. That saves me a lot of.
I've never seen that before. That's really clever.
Neither have I. It's very Yokotaro. Of course, this week was the IGF nominations. They came out. I guess by the time people are listening to it, last week. But incredible list of games. The Seamus McNally Grand Prize has Paradise Killer, which you absolutely should play. Teardown, which if you haven't played it, is like. Do you remember what was Blendo Games' previous games? Quadrilateral Cowboy?
Yeah.
If you combine that with like blowing stuff up with destructible environments, that's kind of Teardown. It's this voxel-based heist game. Really fun, really interesting. Chicory, A Colorful Tale, Genesis Noir, which has 4 nominations. Umurangi Generation and Spiritfarer. Like it very strongly seems to be an overwhelmingly narrative year this year in terms of Seamus McNally.
Cool. Spiritfarer got a nomination. It was on my Game of the Year list for last year.
Yeah, I have a whole bunch of games a whole bunch of friends that worked on that game. It's really like a big deal in Montreal.
It's a wonderful game. I will say I couldn't finish it. It went too long for me, but I can see how people who would enjoy that would love it.
I think A Short Hike won the grand prize at the 2020 IGF.
Might have, yeah. But yeah, there's a bunch of like really wonderful things in the IGFs. Say No More got a Excellence in Audio Award, which is basically a game about yelling no at people in many languages, including in Arabic, and the Arabic is correct.
Good.
Hadr, which I mentioned on one of our previous episodes, got a nomination in Best Student Game.
Yep.
Nice.
Which is really exciting. For excellence in design, I have to shout out, also mentioned on this very podcast before, There Is No Game Wrong Dimension got a nomination.
I love that game.
Other games you should check out, at least in my personal experience. Disc Room by my former Vlambeer co-founder Jan Willem Nijman, together with a team of wonderful friends. Science is a Sojourner, if you haven't played it, really wonderful, really strange, really good. And A Monster's Expedition by Dragnek and Friends. Dragnek has a very specific type of puzzle game. If you like that kind of puzzle game, you shouldn't miss this one. In narrative, I think Haven we mentioned before. So I would absolutely recommend that one. In visual, I remember In Other Waters, I think, might have been mentioned. And Cardo, if you haven't played that, Cardo is really worth
so
it.
Sweet. Yeah, I love Cardo.
There is an honorable mention for a game called Omori for visual art, and that game does have a really remarkable visual style. Quite an intense game.
How do you spell Omori? I can't find it.
Omori.
Oh, I see. Okay. Ooh, that looks nice.
And then in the Nuovo Award, Blazeball was obviously like gonna get a mention there.
Yes.
Welcome to Elk also got a mention, and Airplane Mode, which is a game where you sit in an airplane and it's like Flight Simulator if you were a passenger. So you just sit there, you kind of interact with your screen and look out of the window and order a drink. And that's the game. It's real time, just like Flight Simulator. So if you really miss airplanes, you can go check that one out again. That's kind of. I mean, there were some other mentions of games that I enjoyed, like Nuts got a mention, which I really liked. Liquidators, which I think I mentioned on the show before as well. As always, like the IGF, like it's just full of incredible indie games. It does have a definite narrative slant this year, which is exciting to me because usually IGF sort of like swings across 2 or 3 years. So as somebody who likes very like mechanical design, I'm kind of looking forward to seeing if we'll see a bit more of that. That said, the servings were great this year. Like, what an incredible list of games.
That's great. That's a lot of games to add to my backlog.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I've played most of them, which is nice. So I can, the list of games I just mentioned is my recommendations out of that list. So I hope you could write real fast, Fauzi.
Luckily, this is recorded, Osama.
Smart.
So we can go back into this and like listen to what Rami was recommending for us.
Right.
It looks like Paradise Killer is on the top of my list now. I've heard of it. I hadn't actually seen it. It looks really interesting. I'm looking.
It's really interesting. It's a specific game, but it's really worth exploring. Oh, and speaking of things that I mentioned on the podcast before, Unbeatable now has a pretty good demo, like about 2 hours or an hour-ish, that you should really give a go. It's such an interesting game. The Kickstarter succeeded, just like the Kickstarter for Alex, who was on one of the Suhoor Bites.
Yes.
With
nice.
Spirit Swap. So that's all good. Congrats to those teams.
Congrats.
And then what else did I? Oh, I finished Nier Replicant.
Ooh, tell us about that.
It's good. It's. I mean, it's Yoko Taro. It's strange, and I mean, it's not. How do you describe Nier Replicant? Everything is terrible, right? Like that's kind of Nier Replicant. It's like everything is terrible, and every time you think like there's hope or there's like anything good in that world gets punched in the gut, right? And that's kind of what the world is. And I think in it is still a seed of hope, but you have to search for it. It's they have a new ending added to the game, which kind of is a very strange thing. But the thing that's interesting about Nier, I think, is two things. Is the narrative design is exquisite. Right, they use your understanding of what games are and how games work, and they kind of use that against you in the same way Nier Automata does that. Replicant is a bit more straightforward. I think it's from a different time as well. I think it tries to speak more to doing what you believe is right, causing harm. Mm-hmm. And I think in that regard, it's a really powerful game. I think the other thing that the game does really well is like setting an atmosphere, right? It's this wonderful is this wonderfully textured world. It's a really small world, and they use every space with enormous sense of economy. Every place is used in every possible way. Every corner has a meaning at some point during some quest somewhere. But really, there's only like 5 major zones in the entire game. And then, but the world building is really well done. Each of these places has their own culture, their own language, their own music, and all of that is done in a really wonderful way where the languages are made up, right? It's just the music in Nier is some of the best video games music ever, and it has this almost otherworldly quality with like this. The language is like a mix of English and Japanese, and from what I understand, French and some other languages.
Wow, that's an interesting mix.
Yeah, it's it's interesting because you can't follow what they're saying, but somehow the music is so well done that you can follow what it means.
But you pick up on some words while they're talking?
I didn't really. Maybe somebody who speaks Japanese would be able to, but it's. I think they grab the phonemes more than the words, right? So it's more the sounds of it. Remember that song in English where they grab all the phonemes in English and reconfigure them to sound like what English sounds like to people who don't speak English?
Yes, I do remember that.
That one. Yeah. But then for 4 or 5 languages, there was no Arabic in it, sadly. I didn't hear any Arabic sounds. Also, we'll say didn't hear any Arabic rhythms or like it's very Western music in general.
That's a shame because Arabic music is so good.
Yeah, I mean it's very different mostly, right? Like you can immediately recognize Arabic music because it's a different school of musical thinking, really. Like it's way more rhythmical.
The majority of musical instruments that like were used in European medieval or classic music, they all have roots in Arabic music instruments in some way.
I'm not surprised.
So like like the lute or the lute shares the ancestor with the oud that it was used till this day as part of musical instrument. But even like the guitar has ancestry from like the word itself comes from Arabic to some extent because guitar comes from Spanish guitarra even, and guitarra comes from the Arabic qithara, and that's like the origin of the word.
How about that?
Yeah, so like stringed instruments and lute instruments, they all have like some kind of Arabic history coming back into it as well. I'm not a music history expert, but I always feel like the things that sort of define Western music in many ways end up being like the piano. Yeah. I don't really remember. I don't think there is an equivalent of that in Arabic music, is there? We have like stringed instruments, but there's the qanun is the closest thing. Like a piano is technically a stringed instrument that is hammered, right? You hammer on the strings with the keys. The qanun is shaped even like a piano, but you put it in your lap, and you wear like metal claws, and you pluck the strings.
Right. It's a pluck instrument.
There's a Persian equivalent. I'm not sure if we use it in the Middle East as well. I forgot what it's called. It looks exactly like a qanun, but instead of using like the claws on your finger, you have like tiny hammers. And you kind of like you hit on those strings to make music.
Interesting. I don't know. Like for me, it's always interesting because I feel like I did some digging in somewhere in history to sort of like see where because like I grew up with like Western music and Arab music, right? Like Egyptian music most specifically, but Arabic music. Like I'm sure there was some people that were Lebanese or Syrian or whatever in the songs that I was listening to back in the days. And I found it so strange that they're so different. Right. And I mean, again, like I was not a musical scholar. I didn't know about like quarter tones or semitones or like how quarter tones aren't used. Like I didn't know all that stuff yet. So I just started searching. One of the things that I kind of found interesting is that if you look at the evolution of Egyptian music anyway, you can kind of tell that the British and the French were there, right? Because a lot of the sort of famous Egyptian musicians were actually using sort of like a more jazzy like style to their music, and they kind of like started in that tradition of these musical, like, what do you call it politely, this musical invasion of Western understanding of music, but it still managed to make it their own again, which I think is very interesting. Who were the old, like Kulthum, and who was the God? There's a lot of them. Abdul Halim Hafiz, I guess. Like all of that's
the OGs.
All the OGs, right? The thing that my dad listened to and just went like back in my days, like that stuff.
But like for those guys, man, like especially for Kulthum, like I think almost all the songs they initially start to be written on the oud, the lute.
Right.
Like that's the main instrument. Like the music composer writes the music on oud and then distributes it over the orchestra with the string section and whatnot. But Kulthum, especially, I think at its core is very Arabic in its tradition because it utilizes quarter notes almost entirely as part of how it's written.
Yeah, it was the orchestra that was really added because the more traditional Arab music was very small groups of musicians, right? Like maybe five or six. Most of them on percussion, and then one or two that were doing that seemed, at least from what I researched back then, one or two that seemed to be doing more melodic instruments. But most of it is rhythm, right?
Yeah.
I found that fascinating. Yeah, the tabla and darbuka and all of that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, like pop culture, like especially when it comes to music, Egypt is the biggest exporter of music in the Middle East. I think it's a big part of why, like, almost everybody from the Middle East, no matter which country they come from, they can understand the Egyptian accent. Is because almost all of the pop culture and the music is in Egyptian accent. I think Lebanon is like one of the strong exporter of pop culture. Then the Gulf. But Egypt is definitely number one when it comes to like the exporting of pop culture, the movies, the cinema, but definitely the music, and like all of those people
must have gone so.
Rami spoke about. Yeah, like Kulthum or Abdul Halim or all these guys are all Egyptians. Even like back in the day, Farid Al-Atrash, I think he's Syrian.
Yes,
but he moved over to Egypt and he sang almost entirely in the Egyptian accent. Because
it's like the LA of the Middle East.
Exactly,
like everybody who wants to make it is going to move to Egypt.
I don't know, baby. It's in Cairo.
Y'all must have gotten so tired of Amr Diab and stuff like that. Even I got tired of Amr Diab at some point. I'm like, okay, I get it. What was the song again?
Amr Diab is fascinating for me, man. Like, have you seen a picture of him recently? That guy never ages. He's like
he doesn't age.
He doesn't age.
It makes no sense.
He's hit max level at some point and just stopped aging since.
For sure. It makes no sense.
He's like 16 at least. Like, but he looks like he's still 20.
Yeah, I think he is 60 actually.
And his song plays at like every, like Habibi Noor Al-Ain plays in every gathering like in history.
Habibi Noor Al-Ain is that one song where you're like, just like it starts and you just go like, oh, this one again.
Yeah.
Like I don't even know what the equivalent in Western music would be because like this song is so incredibly overplayed.
Yeah, I don't think there is an equivalent. Not to that level. I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. Yeah, Habibi Noor Al-Ain.
That song is over 27 years old.
Yeah, that's horrifying to me, right?
That song came out in 1996.
Wow,
that's horrifying.
I know.
Yeah,
that's not just
came out before I was in college. Wow.
Oh my god.
But I remember, like, when that song came out, like all the dudes had like that, 3 pounds of gel in their hair, like, you know,
Yeah.
throwing your head backward. It was such a thing. The Amri Diab look, everybody like had their hair like super sticky. Like if it like the wind flies by the hair, it will like collapse because it's like a piece of plastic web up.
Even the music video for that is like frustratingly overplayed. Like, it starts with just the drums, and it's like him walking up to this little Mediterranean village, and then there's just this music video, and you're like, okay, here we go.
But if you remove it from the overplaying, it's actually a really catchy song.
It's a catchy song.
Yeah, it deserves it to a certain extent.
Yeah, to a certain. He did at, I don't know where it was, but it was at some event. He did a song, Afrikyo. Apparently, when I was growing up, I would keep singing that. And I don't know where it was. I don't know what. Oh, it's the let me see if I can find it. The African Olympic Games.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, the African Olympic Games. He opened that with a song called Afrikya, and it was partially in French, partially in Arabic, and partially in English, I think. And I just kept singing the Arabic part when I was a toddler. That was 1991, so I was like 2 years old or 3 years old. And that was my. Apparently, I would not shut up.
You know, like the music from Algeria was also quite popular here in Europe. Rai music.
Oh,
I don't know if you guys know, like guys like Sheb Khaled, Sheb Mami, Rashid Taha.
They collaborated with some European artists as well. They got that popular.
Yeah, but like those guys were like, you know, charting in France. I think Khaled like is known for Aisha, Didi, like those songs are charting quite a bit. Rashid Taha, they used to like have concerts all over Europe. I think like, you know, those guys, like especially with Rai music coming in from Algeria, were like the kind of like the starting point of like modern alternative Arabic music. Like there's a bunch of like these bands right now that kind of merges super traditional folkloric music with like more westernized or like more modern instruments, electric guitars or like stuff like that, or like brass sections. And they getting a bit popular.
Yeah, I will say like there's this band that I really enjoy called it's Cairo and then Key, like karaoke, I guess. And what I liked about them is that I think they started in Egypt and they did English songs, and then they got kind of popular with that. And then I guess they had like a moment of realization where they went like, no, we want to be popular in our own language. And they switched to pretty much exclusively Egyptian songs.
Nice.
I really respect them for that.
Yeah.
It's the kind of thing where I'm like, wow, could have been so easy if you just kept going in English and like just sort of ignored that part of your heritage. But I guess with the revolution and everything that happened there, like they kind of found that need to be in their own language.
It's been a strong movement like that in the Middle East. We have a very strong alternative music scene in Jordan. Like there was those guys called Autostrad. I think they've got quite popular. There's a band called Jadal. They make like this kind of also alternative music. Like they sound like Muse, but they talk about like some real Arabic stuff. There was a band called Soul 47. I don't know if you guys heard them, but those guys are like from all over the place. So one of them, like, is a dude I know that, you know, from Jordan. Like he was a music producer and guitarist. He moved over to the UK. The front man was also a rapper in Jordan that also moved over there. They basically did electronic Dabke music. So it's like it's like, you know, it's when you hear the stuff, you be like, oh, is there a wedding or what's going on? Like somebody finish Tawjihi, what's going on? Like there's like some big celebrations and people are like, you know, doing Dabke all around. But they're using like, you know, electric sounds into recreating that kind of like super folkloric dance and stuff. So super cool band. It's kind of nice to see those guys. They were touring all over Europe as well. So it's kind of nice to see those guys. Like I caught one of their shows in Berlin once. I caught the Lebanese band even once in Berlin, Mashru' Layla. Those guys are also quite
Berlin is
popular.
pretty good at doing that, though. Like Berlin tends to attract people from all around the world that way.
That's true. True that.
I am. I also just enjoy seeing more of the sort of like Arab diaspora around the world, like sing in Arabic more. There was this Eliana did she sang Ahwag, right? Like a classic. But she sang that recently. I don't remember when it was. I came across it like a year or 2 years ago. But I think she's like Palestinian and then South American, like Chilean, probably.
Okay.
And just like she sang Ahwag in a more modern version. I was like, wow, okay, that's cool. I don't know if I don't know if my dad would listen to it, whether he would think it heresy or nice. Like it's hard to tell. I should ask him. I should play it for him.
It's still a cover, so
right.
it's like a nice mix.
Yeah.
Shakira is like half Lebanese, half Colombian, I think.
Right.
Well.
True.
So
true. Remember when she did a Zaghrouta? And the entire Western world was like, what is this weird thing she's doing with her tongue? And everybody was like, what? There was like think pieces about what it meant for like weeks. And I'm like, oh my God, you people. Hire an Arab. One Arab, please.
I mean, like, I love like witnessing any Arab celebration or like, a moment of joy when like suddenly like any surface turns into a Dabke, like a desk,
right.
At the table, an empty milk can. Just, somebody grabs it and it turns into a Dabke, and then the guy starts zagharit everywhere. And then one person will like grab either a napkin or a tissue, or if they happen to have a masbaha, and start twirling this thing around, and then there's an instant Dabke. And what I like about the Dabke is that like, like immediately everybody's holding hand, and if you've never done it before, you're still going to be dragged into it, and you can still learn what it is. And like for those who've never seen it, it's like, a bunch of people like holding hands side by side, and there's the person that's leading is like swirling something around like a napkin or a rosemary or something like this. And then it's a dance that revolves around a bunch of different steps. It involves you slamming the floor in some pattern before moving sideways and then dragging everybody else along. And like there's some people that are like super good at it.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but you don't have to be that good to participate. Like you said, the basic steps.
The more to the front you get, the more ridiculous people get at it.
Yes. It's a really beautiful thing to watch. If someone who's listening hasn't seen Dabke, just look up Dabke videos. You're not going to regret it.
You're going to find some very extreme Dabke.
Yes.
Like very extreme Dabke.
Yes.
You're like, excuse me, is this a thing? Okay.
Yes. Like I've seen Dabke like fly off the wall. Like people just like one person doesn't touch the ground for a while. That's not really the common kind of Dabke you see.
Are you good at it, Osama? Have you done a bunch of Dabke before?
I've done a bunch of Dabke. I'm very uncoordinated as a person, so no, I'm not good at it, and I cannot get better at it. But I'd never miss an opportunity to join the Dabke line. It's just too much fun. I can't pass it up. What about you?
How about you, Fuzzy?
Yeah, all the time. Of course,
yeah.
I'm terrible at it. Terrible at
you
it
too.
myself. Yeah.
I was like, you're front of the line. Like you were either front of the line or you're like hiding in the back. It's one or the other.
No, I'm the second or third person in. That's kind of like I ruined the rhythm for everybody else after. And then I just get dragged around. No, I love to play music, but I can't dance to save my life.
Right. I'm too tall for any of the Arab.
That's what I was going to say. That's because harder really for tall people.
It's really funny. I read this thing about how folk dances are usually a result of the more common body structure and build in a region. So, and it made sense. It made immediate sense to me because you look at Dutch dance, and I have a relatively Dutch built body, right, 2 meter tall. And you look at Dutch dance, and it's just like this awful It's like uncoordinated throwing limbs around, and that's Dutch dancing. I'm like, this makes a lot of sense. And then you look at the Arab, and a lot of it for Arab dances is in the shoulders and in hips, right?
Yeah.
Right. Like and it's not necessarily gendered. It's kind of there for any gender or any body. Is like the dances mostly happen in the shoulders and the hips. And I have the shoulders. I can move the shoulders, but my hips don't. They don't. It's not that they don't lie. They just don't.
They don't lie. I was gonna say that.
They just don't do anything. So Dabke, it's kind of hard. I'm the person sitting at the table and just sitting there like with my shoulders and clapping along. You know, I'm like the grandmas at the table.
I was about to say, if you join any Arab celebration, if you can't dance, all you have to do is just stand and clap around, and then you're part of it.
Right.
Clapping is a totally acceptable form of dancing.
Yeah. I have to actually mention that, like, I grew up really loving hip hop. Like, hip hop was my main like style of music that I listened to, and the Arabic music influence on hip hop is huge. There's tons of producers that would sample Arabic music or just like take the rhythm. But like really what blew my mind...
Not pay for it, but definitely sample it. Right?
Absolutely. But what blew my mind when I was young, especially in the college years, is when I heard Arabic hip-hop for the first time. I actually heard it from a person who would later become my friend, who I later actually had a class with at college, who you interviewed in one of the Suhurbites, Narsi, the narcissist.
Yes. Oh, Narsi. Nice.
Yes. The first time, not only was it like Arabic hip-hop, with like, it's English and Arabic, he'd go between the two, which already was like, oh my God, a fusion of both my cultures, like both things that I loved. I grew up here, but like I'm from Iraq. I was born there. And it was Iraqi specifically, like he's from Iraq as well. So I would hear like a lot of our slang and a lot of our turns of phrase. And he spoke about like serious topics like the war and everything. And then eventually when I went to college, like this is a little bit later, I actually had a class with him and we became friends, and we've been friends since. It's just crazy to think that what a huge influence that hip hop had that Arab music had on hip hop, but then specifically to my life. Like that is something.
Man, what a small world.
It came full circle.
Did you know that Osama and him were friends at all?
No. I actually met him because I was invited to an interview about a video game that he was also being interviewed over.
Yes.
So we met on Al Jazeera. And later it was like, hey, we're friends. I'm like, excuse me?
Yeah, actually, it's crazy because two of my students turned out to be his nephews, which like that's like 20 years later. I noticed that they had the same last name, and it didn't connect. And then one day they came up and they're like, we're Narsi's nephews, right? It just blew my mind. It is a small world.
It is, and I mean, especially when you get further from the Arab world, the community kind of bands together.
Yes,
right. Like, and that's kind of nice. And I think I have to say music is such a nice connecting factor between the region, because we can all groan at Amr Diab being on TV again. And we can all just sort of like, the dances sort of carry between the region, right? Doesn't really, even though the cultural differences are pretty big, the dances are kind of the same. And whether you're like a Palestinian or a Jordanian or an Egyptian or an Iraqi, like you could probably just stand in a group of people from the other cultures and the dances would be the same or very similar.
Yeah,
I kind of love that.
I think it's if there's one thing all Arabs can agree on, is that if you're turning on music in the morning, it has to be Fairuz. It's like one universally agreed upon piece of information, is that Fairuz is for the morning.
Yep. Yeah.
Wherever you are.
Yep. Yeah. I always, it's funny because for me, a lot of music I always felt that Arab music was very old, because my dad would always put it on the TV and it would always be these black and white recordings.
Yeah.
So I always thought that it was like 70 years old. And it just turns out that even if it wasn't 70, well, by now it's 70 years old. But when I was a kid, it wasn't. It's just a lot of stuff was recorded in black and white back when.
Yeah.
So it was nice to kind of see that they're actually much closer to our day to day than I thought they were. But I don't know. It's one of the few things that I feel just connects through all of the Arab world without any friction, without any conflict, without any argument. Is the music. Now I'm thinking about it.
It's true.
Might actually be true.
I believe so. Oh, we'll hear, if it's not true, we'll hear about it. You know, we'll
get away about it in the Discord.
Exactly.
Well, speaking of which, I think we should wrap this one up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Fauzi, is there any music? Any music? Because I mean, I mentioned somebody. Osama mentioned somebody. Is there anybody where you said like, oh, you should listen to these people? Because you know a lot of musicians. So.
Yeah, I think I mentioned a bunch. So like, I think a lot of that I know that are Jordan, like people I know from Jordan. So like, definitely Autostrad, Soul 47, Jadal, my dear friend Ala Wardi, Aziz Maraka. Those guys, super talented. Miss them all.
We should see if we can get some of them on the podcast someday, maybe.
It would be cool. It would be cool to get them on.
Could be fun. Well, let's look into that. For now, let's wrap it up for today, because I think that was a fun chat. I feel like listening to a lot of music now. Maybe I can play some more until Mass Effect comes out.
Get some Alex Bela to play some of his stuff.
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
Malika's a hero. Yeah, we're back to the normal intro and outro songs again. Now Ramadan is over, and I'm going to miss the Ramadan one.
I am, but Ramadan's just a couple of weeks away.
Yeah, just a couple of weeks, right?
It'll be here before we know it.
Anyway, thanks so much for listening in, everybody. Check us out on the usual places. Come join us at the Discord, and for now, salam.
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 That was the Habibis podcast for this week. I was Rami Ismail, your host for this episode. You can find me on Twitter at @THA_Rami. My fellow Habibis were Osama Dorias, who you can find on Twitter at Osama Dorias, and Fauzi Mesmar, who you can find on Twitter at Fauzi Mesmar. Send us your questions, stories, and suggestions via info@thehabibis.com. The intro and outro music was provided by Malik Zubaila, and the logo was provided by Ibrahim Hamdi. The Habibis is a weekly podcast about 3 game developers drinking good Arab tea, with new episodes launching every Friday, inshallah. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcasting service or check out thehabibis.com for more information. Thank you for listening, and salam.